Nobody really was saying, I want you to go here and I want somebody else to go there.
That's correct.
In the execution of that warrant that afternoon, he used a white-handled knife. Is that correct, sir?
Yes.
Does that appear also in page 48 sheet?
Yes.
There were other items as well in the foot locker. Is that true, sir?
That's correct.
And you recollect the day you sit here, what else was present in that foot locker? For example, were there calendars, papers?
I don't remember.
Do you remember recipes?
No.
Do you remember a red, I would call it a Hallmark box containing what I would call cooking knives? Remember that being present in the foot locker as well?
I don't remember what foot locker it was in. I remember seeing something like that.
There was more than just this knife that's present on the table. Is that right?
Yes.
In fact, there were a red-handled single-bladed knife and butterfly knife. The sheath with a red and blue knife. Is that correct?
Yes.
There was a green-handled knife, a couple letter openers, you both took as well.
Yes.
Folding knife, an army knife with a sheath, green-handled knife with a sheath.
Yes.
Did you see a tackle box at all out in the garage? Did you look through that? Do you recollect that?
No, I don't.
Was there a gun other than the llama, the 45 caliber gun that was taken?
Yes.
Was it 357 Magnum, for example?
Yes.
Was there 22 pistol,
Yes.
shotgun? Remember that? A rifle?
Yes.
All the questions I have, Your Honor. Thank you very much.
Did any of those other guns that the police referred to, 22 pistol, the 357 Magnum, the shotgun, the rifle, did any of them appear on your search warrant as items to seize?
No.
The only gun that you were ordered to seize was one.
The law 45 on that.
Did any of the other knives, or the letter openers, or the dinner knife, whatever else that the police referred to, did any of them have blades, bent, like they did the three?
No.
I have no further questions.
Thank you very much.
Step down. Take forward. Go ahead.
Did anybody take any clothing? Clothing?
Yes.
An orange pair of overalls?
No. Don't remember that.
Remember, obviously, a pair of socks?
Yes.
Any other clothing that you recollect?
Not that I want to.
Thanks very much.
Witness will be released at this time or excused right now. Step down and stand. Subject to recall. I presume or not.
Your Honor, I don't tend to have it back in court if I was ready to call it back, so it's kind of needed.
Go ahead.
They call James Chapman. Officer, yes, Lieutenant Chapman, step in. Mr. Chapman, step forward, raise your right hand with one knee.
Or affirmative, gentlemen, since you're now about to release the Come chair, please.
Your name, Lieutenant Chapman?
Yes.
Your occupation, sir?
I'm a criminalist
Crime Laboratory in Des Moines, Iowa.
And tell us what the duties are there.
My main duties are working in the laboratory, assigned to chemistry physics section of the laboratory. Two main things that I've worked with are evidence submitted in reference to fire cases and explosive residue cases. I'm also assigned to participate in crime scene investigation work.
How long have you been employed?
June 1st of 1971.
What is
Criminalist is the title given to civilian examiners in the laboratory. A criminalist individual examines materials submitted in reference criminal type cases anywhere in the state of Iowa from any law enforcement agency.
Will you review for us, please, your education and professional employment?
I have a Bachelor of Science degree from Morningside College in Sioux City, Iowa. On graduation from there, became employed with the Iowa Department of Agriculture Laboratory in Des Moines, Iowa. That was February 2nd of 1970. First of 1971, I transferred to the, at that time, DCI Crime Laboratory, today DCI. I've been employed there. Working there, I trained under experienced examiners. I've had in-service training at the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory in Madison, Wisconsin, former Michigan Department of Health Crime Laboratory in East Lansing, Michigan. Attended the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia, 4 classes dealing with the type of examinations conducted in the crime laboratory. Also attended ATF laboratory for some training there, and have attended other seminars dealing in the crime laboratory.
How many criminals are there in the state like that?
Approximately 22 of us now.
And do pretty much all of those people have the dual roles, both as forensic scientists and also as
Yes.
would you explain for us, filling out a little bit about how that works, what the specialization is within the laboratory and what the responsibilities are within the
We have a multitude of sections in our laboratory. First area I'll talk about is the photographic section. People are responsible for processing film, taken either in-house or out in the field. We have a chemistry section which deals with the analysis of narcotics and drugs. We have a toxicology section which deals with examining blood and other body fluids or tissues for drugs or poisons. An alcohol section which examines material for the presence of alcohol, mostly referenced to present cases. The area that I work in examines material from arson and explosive cases. Serology section which examines material such as blood, hair, fibers, paint soil, glass, safe material. We have our ident section which those people examine material for the presence of fingerprints. We do shoe sole comparison work and tire track identification. We have our firearm identification section, and those people examine bullets, shell casings, etc. We have our tool mark section. Those examiners examine materials where a tool may have been used to pry something open or leave marks on it. They examine those types of things. We have our document section. Those people that examine materials for handwriting, stolen documents, forgeries, typewriter, type comparison, ink comparison, anything that has to do with writing material. Then the other last section is the crime scene investigation section.
Who's in the crime scene investigation section?
Basically, all the examiners in the laboratory participate in that.
So everybody basically is a specialist in one or more of the above described categories and also a crime scene. Is that right? And there are about 1, 2 of them.
divided the work in pairs. We rotate being on call a week at a time as primary team and a secondary team. And the way the system is now, you're on call about every 2 weeks.
And, are you regularly teamed with the same partner?
Yes.
Who is your partner?
My partner is Linda Sauer.
Your particular specialty within forensic science is arson and explosives. What is hers?
Hers is in parology,
Which is
dealing with analysis of blood and body fluids for blood typing, hair and fiber identification.
how long are you on crime scene duty?
A week at a time,
How frequently is this come on?
every 8 weeks.
That's you're on crime scene duty this week.
Linda.
So when it's your turn, basically there's you and Linda who are experts or at least specialists in arson or serology, and another week it could be forensic scientists in your laboratory who would be specialists in other areas as well, right?
Yes.
What in general are the duties of crime scene concepts?
The main duties for the crime scene people are to proceed to requesting agencies. They have a question desk that they feel they need some assistance in. Are taken to the scene. The scene has been processed by the team. Processing involves photographing the scene, documenting the scene in the way of diagrams, sketches, collecting any possible physical evidence that may be at the scene, processing the area for late fingerprints, looking for, say, anything that may show as a perpetrator or be able to place the perpetrator back to the scene of the crime at a later time. The crime scene team will then proceed to the autopsy to observe the autopsy and collect specimens, known specimens at the time of that examination, also take pictures. Then return those items and the items collected at the scene back to the laboratory in the morning for analysis.
So you try to, at the crime scene itself, try to observe, document, and collect anything that might help you identify a perpetrator.
Yes.
Is every crime scene the same?
No.
Or every two crime scenes the same?
No.
But how do you know what to do then?
Basically, the standard procedure is photographing, documenting each case, the type of thing varies, and the type of evidence or type of evidence may be less or different.
I trust you on your experience as well.
Yes.
And how many years experience do you have in crime scene work?
I've done that in Canada. Processing crime.
I don't have the one question.
And
This has been participating in crime scene work. Majority of the time I've been in the laboratory since early 1971.
You and Linda Sal proceeded for a request to the Patterson residence.
Yes.
Arrived there about when?
About 6:40 on August 23rd, 1987.
Mr. Chapman, we've heard a good deal of this already from Officer Stewart, so I won't drag you great myself through the whole thing, but would you summarize to the jury just so they understand what you found and what you did that day?
Basically, upon arriving at the scene, we were met by some of our agents from our association and also the Washington County Sheriff and one of the deputies, Jack Stewart Jr.
plaster cast of that tire track?
No,
Why not?
because there was no tire tread design present that was lacking because of the grass area.
It wouldn't have been that existing now.
None present. So the cast was meaningless.
Taking the plaster cast out of the south crime scene where the base was found,
Yes.
that was what?
Shoe tread design.
Was there anything other than that shoe that was plaster casted?
No.
And why not?
The shoe was cast because of the obvious, well, not obvious, but it was left, looked like it was total, complete, and therefore would be a good thing to cast. Prior to casting, photographs are taken and then cast made. And with tire tracks observed, they were not really suitable for casting, but photographs were made of tire tracks.
And why were they suitable for plaster cast?
The extra depth, I guess, of the marks that were there and the incompleteness of the marks would not have made a very good plaster cast.
I guess what I'm asking you here are tire tracks and shoe impressions defined as they're only suitable for plaster casting?
No,
More often the exception than the rule is that unsuitable.
it's probably more often for shoes than for tires.
But did you plaster cast everything which was suitable for plaster casting? In your opinion?
Yes.
One of the last things you did, I understand, was check for crimp. That's the kind of thing we had in all the correct?
Yes.
Why is that one of the last things done in the crime scene process?
One of the reasons, because it is not one of the cleaner techniques, and it's best to save that for last, so you don't contaminate, maybe some serological materials or other types of evidence.
You, just the crimp on the north door, the west door,
Yes.
what other area do you think?
The door between the office and the back door and the CD base station radio.
And why did you choose those places of that crimp?
It appeared as though the perpetrator had used both the north door and possibly the west door, that when the CD radio had been set in, it looked like that had been not as tidy as it should have been. Evidently, looking at that area, the radio had been setting on something that wasn't anymore. Things were on the floor, so it looked like that place had been tampered with. It was basically limited to the north door, appeared to have been used, the back door, which possibly could have been used, and the door near the CD radio, which appeared could have been moved or had to have been moved in order to remove any material from that area.
Did you print every place that, in your opinion, appears to have been disturbed or moved?
Only those areas.
In all such areas? And having done so, you removed two possibly identifiable prints,
Yes.
both from the north one.
Yes.
Just so we're clear on this, you didn't locate a bullet hole or any full of jackets?
No.
While you were processing the crime scene, have any used a look for that?
No, I did not.
And why did you look for it?
On or after attending the autopsy, finding out what the Tom Bennett, Dr. Bennett, found his cause of death, gunshot wounds were not present. We had no reason to believe that a firearm had been used.
You were figured out now.
Yes.
Again, every crime scene is different.
Yes.
Common sense to experience and relating what you do to what the crime scene appears to be.
Yes.
In your experience, is it terribly unusual for additional items of evidentiary value to be found at a crime scene following the process, the completion of the process of that crime?
No, it's not unusual. It does happen occasionally.
It happens occasionally with the IRECI crime lab. It happens occasionally with every crime lab in the country, basically.
Probably does.
One item was recovered, however, a spring device from the building floor.
Yes.
About how far was that from the body of the patient?
Approximately 4 feet.
Do you know what it was at the time?
No, I do not.
Not knowing what it was, you collected it, however.
Yes.
Hoping to find out what it was.
Yes.
The photograph you recorded a tire track at the south crime scene near the safe.
Yes.
And you tell us where that tire track was in relation to the safe.
It was, recall, on the road. I don't recall exactly how close.
Where was the safe?
The safe was on the east side of the road. In the ditch.
In the ditch immediately adjacent to the road?
Yes.
How far was the tire track from that point in the road closest to the safe?
Really don't recall exact distance. Guesstimates, 5, 6 feet. More maybe less.
Who that no answer back around?
Prosecutor?
You and I talked before many times.
Pardon?
You and I visited before on more than one occasion now.
Yes.
Mr. Chapman, you dusted many places for prints for fashion.
Yes.
You dusted safes before for prints. That's true, isn't it?
I don't believe I've ever had the opportunity to dust it.
Did you dust this one for prints?
No, sir, I did not.
Did anybody?
I believe that was done in the laboratory.
Not done by you?
No, sir.
Rob, you do that?
I believe he did, yes.
Then I'll not ask you about his opinion with respect to that, should I?
No, sir.
Mr. Murillo also worked on safes.
Yes.
When you saw the safe out on the ditch, you physically and somebody else lifted it into the van. Is that true?
Yes, it is.
And that was Deputy Jack Stewart.
Yes, sir.
The two of you that it has been weighed, you know?
I believe it has, but I don't know for sure.
In any event, you did.
No, sir, not.
You don't do anything, do you, Mr. Chapman, with respect to soils, do you? Testing soil samples?
Not now, no.
And you did not do that with respect to this case at all?
Correct.
Well, let me take you back to Ruth Patterson's home. You gained entry by taking off the door, is that the way it was?
Yes.
There are two doors on the east side of that home, is that correct, sir?
Actually, three doors. One off the living room, one into the office, and one into the sales room.
All right, and as it faces east, that is, the doors themselves, how many doors are there that face east? Three?
There's two actually facing.
One faces west.
Well, yeah, one kind of is the south facing door off the living room.
Two that face east. If I understand it correctly, both were locked from the inside, that is, the screen, outer screen door. Is that correct, sir?
It was only a screen door on the office door, and that one was locked. The door to the sales room, a single door there. On the east side.
So we've got one door that is locked. Is that correct? That's on the east. And we have another screen door that is locked, but the secondary door that is attached with that screen door on the same casing, that was unlocked.
Yes.
The screen door, that is, was it aluminum?
Yes.
That is suitable for printing, is it not? Does it print?
Yes.
And the same thing is true with respect to the inside door that was open. That too is suitable for print. Was suitable for print. Is that correct?
Yes.
What kind of material was that?
Wood. Control.
And do I understand that you printed both of those doors? That is, that you dusted both of those doors for print?
No, I did not.
Did anybody, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge.
Did anybody consider the fact that the inside door was unlocked significant at all with respect to this matter?
I don't recall anyone did.
And then the north door, was there a screen door on that as well?
No, there was not.
So there was just one door with respect to that here, is that correct?
Yes.
And on the outside of that door, you could observe, I understand it, on the threshold, the outside of that door, I take it, there was a bloody print on that threshold outside of the door.
Yes.
With respect to that door, on the outside of it, was a print done, or did it be done for place print?
I recall I did it at this time.
You found no print.
Not on the outside.
Incidentally, there is glass in that door, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you dust the glass for print?
I don't believe it. Yes.
But that's a good, I don't want to say medium, that's a good surface. Is that true?
Yes.
Incidentally, is it true that there were also two windows on the north side of Ruth Patterson's house adjacent to that door, that north door?
I believe there were.
Were either one of those doors, these windows, dusted on the outside?
No, they were not.
All right. Now, on the inside, you did dust the inside of the north door for print, that's true.
Yes.
And you found, did you not, two prints,
Yes.
one suitable for typing and one not. That's identification, not identification.
I'm not sure what the examiner found. I did develop and list two areas that had been.
Would you tell this jury where it was in relation
one was approximately 6 foot up from the bottom edge of the door and 4 inches in from the outside edge of the door. The next one below that was found to be approximately 4 foot 4 inches from the bottom of the door mount and approximately 2 inches in from the edge of the door.
Did you remove the threshold from that door?
The aluminum one, yes.
And you turned that over to Linda Sauer with
Yes.
that then went back to the lab for testing and identification of materials that would have been found on that threshold. Is that true?
Yes.
Definitely on the inside glass portion of that door frame, door. Does that footprint?
No, I did not.
The doorknob itself. Anybody does that footprint?
Yes.
Did you find a print on that?
No, I did not.
Does outside of the door knob, that is the knob that faces the street door of the house, the outside of the house, does that footprint?
I recall I did. Nothing there.
No, I mean nothing, that you could lift or something up there.
Nothing.
Same thing is true on the inside of that frame.
Yes.
In that north sales room, Stephanie, it is depicted on this check. As you look at that, that is designated as State Exhibit 55.
I'll trust your.
Just like that.
Yeah.
As you look at it, is it fairly and accurately depict what you saw of that accident from Eugene of the 26th of August?
Yes.
Recollection of these items were from, remember?
You recall it, a table there, cans, and to the right of that what appeared to be a high-pressure washer, and the other item I don't recall, and there was some plants. Those are the things.
That high pressure washer is of some interest to me, and I want to ask you about it. I am curious to know if, in fact, anybody moved that while you were there.
No one did.
What purpose does that have?
Right offhand, I don't recall.
Was it metal?
I believe it was.
Did anybody got that?
Not to my knowledge.
The card table itself, this wants you to understand it's a depiction of Ruth. And this is the card table, is that correct?
Yes, I believe it was.
And it had these cans on it, is that right?
Yes.
This card table, is it suitable for dusting?
I don't recall what the surface.
In any event, that was not dusting.
No, it was not.
handy with the mark as 6-44A information. No, sure.
Photograph showing position of Ruth Patterson, sales room, near the north door.
And I think you the mark as 6-44C for identification purposes.
Another photograph showing position of Ruth Patterson's body near the north sales room door.
And finally then, exhibit 44Z, zebra. And then stick with it.
This is another photograph showing position of Ruth Patterson, sales room, near the north door.
In the photograph, there are many materials, occurs to me, that are suitable for printing. For example, the metal chair. Is that the washer?
Yes.
Right, another metal chair, table, can. Looks like something that holds, I suspect this. That is metal frame as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
Any of those things get tested for prints?
No, sir, they did not.
And as it relates to this area, Chaplain, this is a countertop, isn't it, sir?
Yes.
And this isn't separated off from this north sales room. It's a part of the north sales room, isn't it?
Yes.
So this is drawn to determine, to make the connection that this part is carpeted and this part is vinyl. Okay?
Yes.
This is open as well. You can get through.
Yes.
Nobody dusted any of this area as well, did they?
No, they did not.
And in fact, this is a wall, sir. This is the bathroom court. Coming from the north sales room into the inner office, these walls are suitable for printing. Isn't that true?
Could have been, yes.
And nobody dusted those as well.
That's correct.
If somebody dusted this wall, excuse me, this door here, is that there?
No.
Okay, sir. And then the inner office, you see that?
Yes.
And in that inner office was a desk, is that correct?
Yes.
And it looks to me like a card table, is that correct?
Yes.
And then there was another little table back behind that, is that right?
Yes.
Anybody does any of these items that you print?
No.
The fact of the matter is, in this area had been the safe. At least you suspect that. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you suspect that because is it true that there are some gouge marks that look like they come and then go out this west door?
The gouge marks were on the linoleum towards that door, yes.
Okay, well, what makes you believe that it was situated in here? Did Mr. Bouch or somebody else tell you that?
Or some information of that, as well as a little carpet protector pad that
The runner. Is that right?
well, there was little pads that the safe sat on underneath the legs of that device.
I hand you exhibit designated as 44 double I. Is that in fact the office?
Yes.
I hand you as well 44 double J, and that's just a close-up of that office area, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, with respect to that, excuse me, Mr. Chaplain, I take it that you believe the safe was back in this corner.
Yes.
Is it conceivable to you that someone can move that safe would of course place their hands on any portion of the desk, the card table? In fact, does it look to you like the card table has been moved?
Doesn't appear to.
Did anybody dust that area?
The only area these pictures were door and TV.
That's what we see here. have 44R. That is, again, a photograph of the inner office, is it, sir?
Yes.
Is it generally this area here?
This is the sales room, and it shows to be part of the bathroom wall and the refrigerator area.
That here? I'm curious about that. I'm curious to know if anybody else is that.
No.
Incidentally, can you, or anybody in DCI organization, make a determination as to whether or not a wall or a window or a door casing has any trace chemicals on it?
I'm not sure what type of chemicals.
Windex.
Probably not, no.
Did anybody make a determination as to when a place has last been cleaned, for example? So as you sit here today, as a part of the responsibilities of the DCI, nobody, I take it, in the DCI, that organization can tell us, for example, when the interior of the Ruth Patterson home was cleaned.
No.
Okay. Exhibit 44R shows the refrigerator, almost said icebox, refrigerator, doesn't it?
Yes.
What else does it show? What's that?
All this was a hot chocolate
A dispenser.
dispenser for that.
That's what we've got, next. And 44S, before I publish these, could you tell us, Jerry, what that is?
The photograph of the doorway entering into the dispenser off of the sales room.
And it shows that wall that we talked about, that,
Yes.
and that's covered with
Posters. Everything posters.
material suitable for fingerprints, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
You may.
Well, Chapman. The west door, from which all of us would believe that the safe was hidden.
Yes.
That has a knob on it as well, doesn't it?
Yes.
Does it also have a screen door?
Yes.
Aluminum door?
Yes.
Just the back of the front as well.
Yes.
You did not find the defendant's prints there, or anybody's prints
I
there.
did find it much so.
I'm curious to know if you could make a determination with respect to the shoe print on that threshold. Did that appear to you to be a shoe print that indicated somebody was going in or somebody was coming out of the detail?
I couldn't tell.
Let me take you to some other observations that you made. Incidentally, the walls in the north sales room are wood panel.
Yes.
That's to the vault door that we print. That's correct.
Not certain, but possibly, yes.
So we didn't do any of that either.
No.
As then it relates to your observations of the tire tracks on the west side of Ruth's house, Patterson's house. I think it's that, you tell me if it's correct or not, that there was no tire tread characteristics present, no tracks, is that right?
True.
And the measurements that you made, that is 5'2" in one place, and I believe it is 4 foot 2.5 inches on the inside. That is an estimate, is that true? estimate that we get.
Yes.
It does not tell us what type of a tire, what type of a tread, on the vehicle that made those cracks.
No.
And in fact, there isn't any way that you know of that you could tell the jury or any of us today that any particular automobile made those cracks. Is that true?
That is true.
You can't tell us that a red Rambler, red with white over top, red Rambler made those cracks. You can't tell us that.
No, I cannot.
Definitely, you did make an observation when you first arrived that I think is important. And I'll ask you, that's one of the photos picture. The lights were on the outside, to the north, to the east, isn't that true?
Yes.
Definitely. With respect to the clothing that Ruth had on her, you did see an outline of a knife blade?
There was appears to be one, yes.
You measure that?
No, I did not.
Did anybody measure that?
Possibly the examiner that looks at that.
Your observation, let's stay inside the house for a bit. There were other observations that you made on the interior of that house as well. I'm referring specifically to the observed and other things.
Yes.
Where was that take located?
Located in the closet off of the kitchen. Closet on the north side.
Photograph that?
Yes.
You made a second observation as to another object on the inside of that closet. Is that correct? Well, no. Do you recollect seeing a purse?
Yes.
Do you recollect whether it was open or closed?
No,
Did Linda do that?
Linda was probably be there.
Did you dust either one of those?
No, I did not.
Did that say open or closed?
Close.
Aircraft leading up to the state.
Which safety referring to?
Obviously, the safe house was found, that was found out on that particular road.
Didn't observe any going right up to it.
Was there any tire tracks that would be the west edge or the east edge?
No.
The fact is, there were some tire tracks up by that trestle, isn't that true?
Yes.
And that was about 335 feet from the safe location, safe.
Yes.
You did not take photographs of that, however.
No.
And there were no plaster casts made of those tire tracks, were there?
No.
And nobody did any measuring with respect to those tire tracks either, did they?
No.
It appeared to you that there were some tire tracks indicating that somebody had been pulled out of a ditch down there by
Appears as though someone had been stuck in that location.
and are those the tire tracks that we just talked about, that were not photographed, not cast,
Yes.
not measured?
That's correct.
Did go for the autopsy.
Yes.
How many times did you go into the had home shower? Every time or twice? You left there? You were there next week?
3 times.
You went there following the autopsy?
Yes.
You went there third on service?
We went there the first day that we arrived. We were there the second day between the south scene and proceeding to the autopsy. We were present.
I understand your role in this investigation was not to make comparisons and render opinions.
Yes.
You were a processor of the scene and turn over any materials that were found to others to do the opinion work.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
There's been a fire involved in the crime. I assume that involved with a laboratory analyst as well.
Yes.
Because that's your particular area of expertise.
Yes.
In making decisions on what done at the crime scene, you dusted those surfaces which appeared to you to have been moved or disturbed in some way.
Yes.
And given sufficient time and resources as possible to dust those fingerprints, every surface on the interior of Ruth Patterson's home, was it?
Yes.
How long was that?
Hours.
Hours?
Approximately the whole home, probably something days.
At the South crime scene, when you observed the tracks where it appeared someone had been stuck, that was down by the trestle,
Yes.
about 100 yards or so from where the safe was found.
Approximately, yes.
At that time, Mr. Chapman, did you have any information leading you to believe that the tracks at the trestle were in any way connected with the safe or any aspect of this case?
No.
One other matter, Mr. Chapman. I can't see what is marked as the case exhibit. Recognize that?
Yes.
What is that?
The shoe sole print in blood, tile floor, north cylinder.
Who took that photograph?
I did.
And can you tell the jury what care you took in taking that photograph?
I took numerous photos, used a tripod to hold the camera, a ruler, and a photograph so that enlargement can be made on one-to-one basis, and we drew the entire track in the picture, so that the photograph could be used, hopefully, for comparison to known shoe sole tracks that may be submitted.
And about how long did that take you?
Probably took maybe 30 minutes to take all the photographs of this one.
Would you, go ahead and use a diagram to assist you if it would help and show the jury exactly where that footprint is found?
area and we'll roll in floor.
And diagonal to the,
I meant to ask you originally, Chapman, the safe, when you found it, appeared as though somebody attempted to peel part of it but didn't work very hard at it. That's about correct.
Yes.
That's this little area here.
Yes.
I think somebody used a crowbar or some kind of instrument to peel that down.
Some type of
Any tools, so you examined, have you seen any tools that have made the marks or what do yourself?
no.
You were asked, interestingly for me anyway, if time and effort might take days, but the time and effort, you'd have to spend a lot of time to do all of the things that I suggested should have been done in this case. You said that.
Yes.
You and I, as a matter of fact, have been involved in that very effort in the past. Isn't that true?
Yes.
A lot of time and a lot of effort on the part of BCI. The other hand, you and I have directly been involved. That's true.
Yes.
again, why did you done? What was your basis for your choice deciding what area to done?
Those paper errors appear to me to be the areas that were used by the perpetrator. They've been in that area. That's why I limited fingerprint examination to those areas only.
And is that in accordance with the training practice and experience in crime scene analysis?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Make that down.
We're going to take called Frank Tracy. What's happening here?
That's the problem thing. That's the problem part. Getting off
This witness will take a fair amount of time, so we're going to go ahead and interrupt. Ladies and gentlemen, jurors, remember the admonition previously given you during your conduct during recess is going to take about 10 minutes after the recess at this time.
My name is Frank L. Teresi III, last name spelling T-A-R-A-S-I.
Your occupation?
I am employed as a criminalist.
And again, what is a criminal in case we forgot?
A criminalist is an individual who will process various pieces of physical evidence using various techniques and procedures, will then write reports as to the results of those analyses, and will testify in a court of law as to those results if necessary.
Where are you employed, Mr.
I am employed at the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation Crime Laboratory, which is located in the Wallace Building in Des Moines, Iowa.
Where do you your duties then?
I am specifically assigned to the latent fingerprint section of the laboratory. This section is involved with the development, evaluation, and comparison of latent fingerprints, palm prints, and footprints. These are compared to other latent prints as well as to ink prints. In addition to that, my duties include footwear comparisons, serial number restorations, and a rotational crime scene duty.
Review for us your education and employment.
I have a Bachelor of Science degree. This is in chemistry. from Clarion State College in Clarion, Pennsylvania. That degree was received in May of 1980. In August of 1981, I received a Master of Science degree in the field of forensic chemistry, which is the field of criminalistics. This was received from the University of Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. From the period of May 1981 to August 1982, I was employed as a drug chemist in the Allegheny County Crime Laboratory, which is located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. In August of 1982, I began my employment in the DCI Crime Laboratory. I was initially hired in the capacity as a drug chemist and served in that capacity until December of 1983, at which time I was transferred to the latent print section of the laboratory. I received a large amount of training there, which included 40 hours of training sponsored by the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the field of fingerprint classification. I also received 40 hours of training from the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the field of fingerprint identification. Both of these classes were conducted at the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy in Camp Dodge, Iowa. I have also received 120 hours of training in administrative advanced latent fingerprint techniques. This was conducted by the Federal Bureau of Investigation at the training facility in Quantico, Virginia. I am also completed a 3,120-hour course of instruction that was sponsored and conducted at the DCI Crime Laboratory for latent print examiners. This training was conducted under the direct supervision of a IAI certified latent print examiner.
What is IAI?
The IAI stands for the International Association for Identification, which is a governing body and certifying body for latent print examiners throughout the world.
And have you met the requirements for certification?
Yes, I have.
And you've been tested?
Yes, I have.
And you've been certified?
Yes, I am.
What is a latent print?
A latent print is a chance or hidden reproduction of some area of friction-ridged skin. The skin on the palms of your hand, toes, and soles of your feet is unlike skin present on any other part of your body. You rub your fingers together, it feels rough, corrugated. These ridges are what allow us to pick up items with relative ease. The ridges that are present on these areas of skin, however, are not smooth, continuous ridges. By that I mean they do not enter from one area of the palm or the finger and smoothly traverse the hand or finger and exit the other side. You look at your fingers, there might be what are called whorl formations, loop formations, arch formations, but the actual ridges themselves are discontinuous. These discontinuities, or these areas where they do things other than smoothly flow, give rise to individual characteristics. These individual characteristics are then what we use to make an identification.
Go ahead and tell us in general how fingerprints are compared and identified.
The fingerprints that are present on each and every individual within this room, as well as each and every individual throughout the world, are unique. The fingerprints that are present on you have never been repeated, nor will they ever be repeated. They are unique for you. This is what allows us to make a comparison between fingerprints. Second thing that allows us to make fingerprint comparisons is that fingerprints are permanent. They are formed in the 3rd to 4th month of fetal development, and barring any accidental or intentional injury, will remain the same except growing larger throughout the course of your life, and are even present on the body after death until decomposition.
Are there any particular factors involved in classifying fingerprints? You're talking about trying to match up questions, fingerprints, with all fingerprints?
When we are making a comparison, we are looking for a unique pattern of individual characteristics. The 3 basic types of individual characteristics, what are called ending ridges, which imply that a ridge flows through the pattern area and suddenly stops. a bifurcation, which is that type of a ridge formation where a ridge flows smoothly and suddenly divides into two ridges. The third type of characteristic is what is called a ridge dot, which is that type of a formation where the ridge is no longer than it is wide. These individual characteristics, their location as well as their type, their location and representation or relationship to one another, is what allows us to make a positive identification.
Mr. Tracy, in front of you is what is marked identification there, 36, a brown metal safe. Seen that before?
Yes, I have.
When?
This was seen by me at the laboratory.
What did you do with it?
I processed this piece of evidence for developed latent prints.
When did you do that?
Sometime before September 24th, 1987. I don't know exactly from my report here.
How did you go about doing that?
This was processed with white fingerprint powder.
You did that in the laboratory?
Yes, I did.
This is supposed to possible to ideal conditions, I think.
Yes, it would be.
Tell us what that thing found.
There were no latent prints suitable for identification on this item.
Does that mean that it's never been handled by human hands?
No, it does not.
What, if anything, explains the absence of those latent prints suitable for identification?
There are a number of possible explanations why.
I believe the next one.
Spain, you can rephrase it.
In your training and experience as a latent print examiner, are there a number of different factors that dictate whether or not a latent print can be developed?
Yes, there are.
Can you tell us what these factors are?
First and foremost factor is one, whether somebody has touched the object. If it hasn't been touched, it's difficult for it to receive a latent print. Second reason that latent prints would not or might not be developed on a surface.
The educational ones on the latent this day,
The second reason why latent prints may not be developed on a surface is that the surface itself is not receptive of the latent print. Very rough surfaces. Sandpaper would be a surface that would be very difficult to develop latent fingerprints on. Carpeting, clothing, are surfaces that are very difficult to develop latent fingerprints on. However, just because they are absorbent surfaces does not preclude that all absorbent surfaces, paper for example, which is an absorbent surface, can very easily have latent prints developed off of. I stated earlier that one of the reasons why a surface may not have developed latent prints is that it wasn't touched. Taking that a little bit further, another reason why latent prints might not be developed is that the hand or the area of the skin that is touching them may be protected. Gloves, for example. You put on a pair of gloves, it's 10 degrees outside now. Most of us are going to be putting big, bulky gloves on. It's going to be a little difficult for latent prints to transfer through the gloves to the object. Even surgical gloves, which are very thin, can preclude or make latent prints not be able to be developed on a surface. Another reason that latent prints may not be able to be developed on a surface is the individual who is depositing the latent prints. For example, I am sitting up here, rather profusely sweating, my hands are soaking wet, my hands touching a surface, I am going to leave very good, very nice latent prints that are going to be very easily developed. I touch this countertop, you can almost see my latent prints. However, there are individuals whose hands are very dry, whether because of their occupation or just they naturally have very dry skin. It would be very unlikely to leave latent prints because the oils and the water that is present, that is necessary for the latent print to be transferred, are not there.
Are there even other factors?
There are other environmental factors that could happen. You take an object, deposit a latent fingerprint on it, stick it in the rain, the dew, the snow, the sun. In summertime, for example, latent prints placed on an automobile window may have a lifetime or be able to be developed in a matter of moments, simply because they get baked so much. It's 10 degrees outside. It's cold. Latent prints are not going to have a very long lifetime in the wintertime either, simply because they are cold. If you have a rainy day, if you have a very dewy day, or even a day with very high humidity, all of these things can make it impossible to develop latent prints on a surface. Dusty conditions also make it difficult to develop latent fingerprints.
So there are a fair number of factors possible involved.
Yes, there are.
The fact that you didn't develop any latent fingerprints on, say, surfaces that doesn't tell us for sure that no one's ever touched that.
That's correct.
Mr. Tracy, I hand you Please Exhibit 7. Identify that.
Yes, I can.
Airport Ireland.
You may.
Where's the map tell us the lake print was found and turned over to you, turned over to you, and thereafter, and that is found by check and over to you. And thereafter, you compare that to the known palm print of the descendant of Earth.
Yes.
You're about to run an opinion that in fact the print found on the northeast side door, 6 feet up from the floor, was indeed the print of the descendant who was Anderson, aren't you sure?
I don't know exactly where it was located in regards to the top of the door.
Take my word for it. Then he said it was 6 feet up from the floor.
I have no...
I think
I
Orange
would-
is in.
If Denny said that's where it was, I don't know the exact location of where the print was, but yes, I was planning on...
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I agree.
Well, sir, I would stipulate, Your Honor, that the print of Mr. Anderson does indeed appear on that door. That's the place where our friend Denny Chapman
I took a right of the state Johnson stipulation accepts it on condition that the previously accepted exhibits remain in evidence, and also that additionally was very prepared, states exhibit 57 prepared by this witness to show the examination also be reviewed in evidence. With that stipulation, I think there's a lot of other stuff.
was did it.
57.
Now you continue the board, I
You may. Proceed.
You prepared that, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And what you did is you compared the latent print to the known print. This is the print found on the north door, and this is Gene's print.
That's a photographic enlargement of the latent print that was recovered and a photographic reproduction of the ink print.
And what you've done is shown that in fact it will match up. That's what this works to show it anything, right?
It's the charted enlargement to visualize to the jury how a fingerprint or palm print identification is effective.
You need to be out here tonight, don't you?
I would like to be.
Well, you have something very important tomorrow morning.
Yes, I do.
Involves your own little boy.
Yes, it does.
Well, in an effort to move you along, I'd feel like 57 and do the 57 get going.
All right. Okay.
Yes, we accept that stipulation.
State's going to offer no bid notice, stage 57. And the record so shows the stipulation that has just been entered into between the parties of the court.
In addition to fingerprint identification, do you also do work in the area of tire impression?
Yes, Tire print identification has been received primarily on the job training, as well as training in my latent print program. Part of that training was involved with tire track and footwear identification. In addition to that, I have received some training outside of the laboratory under the auspices of the International Association for Identification. I received a 2-day seminar that was conducted by an individual who, Mr. Peter McDonald, who was a former tire engineer for the Firestone Tire and Rubber Company.
Tell us what factors or procedures are used in making tire impression identification.
Tire tracks are a somewhat different area in regards to latent fingerprints. Tires, being made of a rubber compound, are a fairly soft compound in regards to the surfaces they are coming in contact with. Asphalt, concrete, the dirt roads, the stones, the gravel, the farm fields, all for the most part are a much more tougher surface than the tire itself. This gives rise to tire wear. This gives rise to tire damage. In addition to this, the tire manufacturers, in their efforts to make their tire unique to the purchasing public, try very hard to make their tires unique in design. For example, a Uniroyal tire does not look like, in most instances, a Firestone or a Goodyear or a Goodrich tire. They want you to be able to look at their tire and say, this is their tire. Combination of the class characteristic, tread design, and size, you put together with that the individual characteristics that can occur by having the soft rubber compound coming in contact with the harder surfaces that they come in contact with. This gives rise to the damage, which can give rise for positive identification, saying a specific tire did in fact make a specific track at a specific location.
Tracy, and here's what our mark there states exhibit 45F and 45G. Have you seen those photographs before?
Yes, I have.
What are they?
These are photographs that were produced by Dennis Chapman in regards to this case.
Did you do any work in attempting to compare known tires with those tire impressions?
Yes, I did.
What did you do in connection with that?
4 tires were submitted to the laboratory.
Were these tires identified to you as having come from a particular source?
Yes, they were.
What was that?
These were 4 tires from the Anderson vehicle.
Eugene Anderson?
The information that I have that comes from our receipt form is tires from the Anderson vehicle.
Very well. And did you do a comparison?
Yes, I did.
And would you tell us, please, what was the result of this comparison?
That the tire impressions reflected in the film from which these photographs were obtained are consistent in size and tread design to the tires exhibits BA in the laboratory. These tire impressions could have been made by these tires. However, I must also recognize that other tires of the same size and the same tread design do exist.
And being perfectly fair and clear about this, you're not saying that the tires from the Anderson vehicle are the only tires in the world that could have made those particular tire impressions, are you?
That's correct.
You're saying they're consistent with one set of tires that could have.
I am saying they could have made it, yes.
And you identify the make and model of those tires?
Yes, I did, but I do not have that written in my report. I think there are 2, but I'm not going to say I think.
I'll give it to you. Page 25 of your deposition.
You have previously been posed by usually, I'll refer you to page 25 of your own deposition, Tracy, if that will assist you. If you tell us, make a model of the tires that you
Two of the tires were identified as Goodyear Power Street F78-14 tires, and two were identified as Mohawk Montego belted tires, size P195/75R14.
I take it the Goodyear tires are distinguishable in tread from the Mohawk tires.
Yes.
They're distinguishable from basically any other make of tire that you've observed.
Should I ask you to rephrase that question?
Are they consistent with any other make of tire that you've observed?
In regards to this case, no. However, I will volunteer that it is a common practice throughout the tire industry for one manufacturer to manufacture tires with different brand names on. Goodyear may make Sears and Montgomery Ward tires, putting different names on it with the same tread design.
Likewise, I suppose Mohawk could, at least as far as you know, have such a practice.
Yes.
Goodyear tires, in your experience, do they ever have the same tread design as Firestone or other major manufacturers?
The major manufacturers pretty much stated themselves.
You didn't look at any plaster casts in the tire.
No, I did not.
Does dirt always leave a tire impression that is appropriate and suitable for a plaster casting?
No, it does not.
Does grass?
Grass very rarely leaves a suitable plaster cast or a suitable track for plaster casting.
Let's talk about tire tracks and grass for a moment. If tracking examiners found a single, or at least what appeared to be a single pair of tire tracks in grass and measured the width at two different places and found two different widths, does this surprise you?
No, it does not.
And why not?
For a number of reasons. One, automobiles, most vehicles for that matter, have different tire track widths. The width between the center of the front tire of one front tire and the other front tire, to measure that distance, it's going to be different than the difference between than the distance between the two rear tires. The front tires may be shorter together than the rear tires. That's one possible explanation. Another reason, if a vehicle is taking a curve, you may not be able to get exactly in the center of the tire track or be able to get exactly on the outside or the inside of the tire track so that you can make an accurate measurement. Third, grass is, as I stated, is not one of the best substances or the best surfaces for receiving a tire track impression. It bends over and comes back up fairly quickly. You may have a difficulty in obtaining, once again, the accurate center of the tire track or the accurate inside or outside of the tire track so that you can measure between.
Before we move on to the next subject, just so we're very clear, your opinion, in your own words, that the source of the tire impression in the photographs in front of you is what?
That they could have been made by it.
Could have been made by the tire manufacturer's vehicle.
Yes, the tires, laboratory exhibit BA, could have made these impressions reflected in these photographs.
And that's our positive identification.
No, it is not.
Is it ever possible to make a positive identification in a tire impression case?
Yes, it is.
How is that so?
what needs to be done is that the question impression needs to have sufficient detail present so that a positive identification can be made. By sufficient detail present, I'm referring to the individual cracks, individual cuts, individual chunks of the tire tread that have been accidentally damaged to the tire that are unique to that tire. They have to be able to be reproduced so that we can compare them.
And among other things, on how clear an impression is left.
That depends a lot on how clear of an impression is left. Yes.
Any clearer impressions in your work than what you have right before you?
Yes, I have.
What were those impressions?
Number of impressions. Snow can leave a very good impression depending upon how cold or how warm it is. Dirt can leave a nice impression if it is sufficiently fine enough and sufficiently deep enough. For example, in this photograph, there are large areas that appear to be blank. This could be possible because the tire is bald. Or it could be possible that this ground is so hard that the tire is not reproduced in this material.
As far as making an identification, you've done what you can given the information in front of you and what they have in their
Yes.
Mr. Tracy, do you also have training and experience in the area of footwear print identification?
Yes, I do.
And summarize that for us.
Training I have received with my footwear in regards to footwear identification once again revolves around part of the training that I received with my 3,120-hour course of instruction for latent print examination. I have also received on-the-job training. Some of my colleagues have attended classes conducted by the Federal Bureau of Investigation in regards to footwear. When they go there, they bring back information. They spread it around to the rest of us so that we can help one another.
What factors and procedures are involved in this making footwear print identification?
The shoes worn by each and every individual present in this room have been one place. That's where the wearer has taken them. Walking down the hall, walking down the steps, walking out on the sidewalk, across the street, out into the highways and byways of Washington County. Where you have taken your shoes is, once again, most of the surfaces you have been walking on are harder than the rubber-based compounds that your shoe soles are made of. Once again, you're going to get damaged. You're going to walk across a broken bottle. You're going to walk across some gravel. You're going to walk across some concrete. It's going to scratch. It's going to nick. It's going to make damage to the bottoms of your shoes. These are individual characteristics. In addition to that, each and every individual is going to have a different way of walking. Some people walk on the outsides of their shoes with their heels. Some people walk on the insides. Some people walk heavily on the toes, some heavily on the heels of their feet. This imparts individual wear characteristics that are also unique to your shoes. This individual damage and this individual wear is reproducible. If you step in a sufficiently suitable surface, such as stepping in a dusty surface or stepping on a piece of white paper after you just walked across a dirt road, you might be able to see a reproduction of your shoe print. You may be able to see a reproduction that contains sufficient individual characteristics to make a positive identification.
What procedures do you as a forensic scientist use in trying to make a footwear print identification?
First thing I will do is examine the question or submitted piece of evidence to determine what type of footwear I am dealing with. If I can come up with a possible brand name type of an unknown shoe, I will relay this information to an investigator to give him an investigative aid. I am saying this could be this type of shoe, but I am also going to say it could be something that is very similar to that also. Shoe manufacturers, similar to tire manufacturers, have a habit of copying one another's shoe sole designs. First thing I will do is try to make a brand determination that what kind of shoe I have. I will then examine this for individual characteristics to see if they're sufficient for me being able to make a positive identification or me being able to make any kind of comparison. Then if the investigator submits to me some known footwear or reproductions of known footwear to compare, I will make a comparison. I will begin looking for the individual characteristics. Now, first of all, I will look for the class characteristics to see if I am comparing brand A shoe with a brand A question mark. If I am, I will then compare, trying to find individual characteristics.
Did you do footwear print comparison work in connection with the Patterson on-site investigation?
Yes, I did.
In connection with that, did you receive some question print?
Yes, I did.
What were those?
There were a number of exhibits. One was a footwear print in blood that was on the tile floor of the sales room. This was recorded photographically. There were footwear prints on the threshold as well as 2 plastic floor mats from the sales room and from the office near the couch. There was also a footwear print submitted having come from the door of the mixing room in the warehouse. And there was a final impression that was recorded by film and was also casted that was found on the road from where the safe was recovered.
Mr. Tracy, did you ultimately succeed in identifying the source of the footwear impression on the road by the safe?
No, I did not.
Did you recognize sufficient class characteristics that you could say what type of shoe it was?
Yes, I could.
What type of shoe was that?
It was consistent in tread design and size to the shoe sole lists that were submitted, Laboratory Exhibit AO, which were 8 shoe prints of the shoes belonging to Joseph Trewen, excuse me.
And did you do similar work in connection with the footwear print recovered from the door of the mixing room?
Yes, I did.
And that found to be either identified as or consistent with the footwear submitted from any individual?
It was consistent in tread design to the left shoe of Laboratory Exhibit C, which is a pair of tennis shoes that were to belong to Don Patterson.
That leaves the footwear impressions found on the floor mats of the Ruth Patterson home, the threshold of the Ruth Patterson home, and the impression in blood. You examined those?
Yes, I did.
You told us a few minutes ago about information that you provide to other officers as an investigative aid. Can you explain that a little further?
What we are attempting to do is to do a partial evaluation on the physical evidence that is provided. We are examining it, trying to come up with any information that is possible for the investigator. It's a whole lot easier to look for red pickups than to look for pickups. It's a whole lot easier to look for Nike shoes than to look for any brand of shoe. Any information that we can provide to the investigator is important and is useful. What I did in this instance was examine photographs of the shoe print in blood that was recovered from the tile floor of the sales room, compared this to knowns that we have stored in-house in the laboratory. These are other cases. What we do whenever we take a known footwear exemplar for our comparison, we take a photograph of the shoes, make a copy of the tread design, and store it away for later comparison. When, in this instance, I was presented with a photograph of the footwear in blood, I then went to our files, made a manual comparison in an attempt to come up with any possibilities that I could eliminate as many types of shoe soles as I could. In this instance, I was able to come up with some information which would, I believe, I relayed to Jack Stewart.
And this was early in the investigation.
Yes, it was.
After looking at the photographs of that footwear impression, what information did you provide to Officer Stewart?
I provided him with the information that, in my opinion, this shoe print was made by either a pair of Pony City Wings or a similar type of a shoe with a similar type tread design.
You provided that information to Officer Stewart when they arrested him.
That's correct.
Sometime thereafter, Mr. Tracy, was there submitted to you for comparison a pair of shoes in connection with those footwear impressions?
Yes, there was.
I hand your state's exhibits 34A and 34B. Do you recognize those?
Yes, I do.
And what are they?
These are a pair of Pony City Wing high-top tennis shoes that were submitted to me in regards to this case.
And what did you do with them?
I made a comparison of specifically the right shoe to the footwear print that was photographed that was present on the tile floor of the sales room. In addition to that, I made comparisons of both shoes to a number of footwear prints that were presented or that were represented on the floor mat runners that were collected from the house.
Mr. Tracy, I hand you state's exhibit 31. What is that, you know?
Laboratory Exhibit AG, which is listed as the threshold from the north door of the sales room, which I have seen before.
And what did you do with that exhibit?
There were two footwear prints present on the threshold. These were first photographically recorded, and a comparison was made by me of these photographs to these shoes.
And what, if any, finding did you make?
Of the two footwear prints, I have separated them as AG1 and AG2. AG1 being the first footprint on Laboratory Exhibit AG, AG2 respectively being the second print. AG1 is consistent in tread design to the left shoe, Laboratory Exhibit AX, State's Exhibit 34B. I could only say this was consistent in tread design. I could not positively identify it. I could say it could have made it. The footwear print marked AG2 was consistent to, because of the amount of material that was reproduced here, I could not make a distinction as to which of these shoes, one or either one of these shoes, possibly could have made this footprint. It is consistent in tread design to both of them.
It's also consistent in tread design to any pair of Pony City Wings, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And with court permission would be simply stand before the jury and show them exactly where they can find those footwear impressions. Proceed.
AG1, I have marked around these brackets. I have this big initial AG-1 and with my initials FLT3. AG2 is down here to the right of this, of AG1. Footprint is partially in blood here, and it's also down on the metal stripping, which you may be able to see depending on the angle I hold it at the light. AG1 and AG2.
I hate to reiterate, but being perfectly clear about this, those two footwear impressions on the threshold are consistent with, but you can't positively identify them as having come from the issues sitting in front of you.
That's correct.
You also examined a couple floor mats,
Yes, I did.
and Your Honor, if Mr. Partridge and I may do so, would we ask the witness to demonstrate to the jury where they may find the footwear impressions on the floor?
See. Better go this way.
Well, let's hold them up in front of the jury, and Mr. Tracy, I will ask you to tell us and tell the jury where they can find the footwear prints that you examined. And when doing so, will you please tell us what findings, if any, you made?
I have to give my report to report my findings. There are 4 areas of footwear prints present on this exhibit. F1 is an area down here towards the bottom of this map, and it's being held for you here. This is what I call a composite print, in that it has at least 3 different impressions placed over top of it. One of these impressions is consistent in tread design to the 3 sets of shoes that were submitted as having been Ruth Patterson's. Another of these is take your time, Frank. I can never find what I want when I want it. The other footwear prints present here were not made by the shoes States Exhibits 34. Second area I have marked next to one another, here a couple of feet down from F2. F3 is marked here, F4 in this location. F2 and F4 are consistent in tread design to either shoe. I cannot make a determination as to which shoe. F3, on the other hand, while being consistent in tread design, is consistent in tread design to the right shoe. The left shoe could not have made this one. These 2, I could not make a determination whether it was a left shoe or a right shoe that made this. This one I can make that determination.
Right shoe,
States Exhibit 34.
Eugene answer right shoe.
Yes.
And I'm not sure if I'm making record clear on this. This is States Exhibit 32, the floor mat from the sales room. And are those all of the footwear impressions there?
Yes, they are.
And they're all ones you found correct?
Yes.
clear about that as well, Mr. Tracy. The footwear impressions that you identified on Case Exhibit 32 as being consistent with Eugene Anderson's shoes, you're not making a positive identification on those, are you?
No, I am not making a positive identification. I'm saying they could have made it.
I'm now holding State Exhibit 33, identified as a floor mat from by the couch in the office. Have you seen this exhibit before?
Yes, I have. There is one footwear print present on this item. I've given it the designation G1. This is consistent in tread design to the right shoe. I can eliminate the left shoe as having made this, but it is consistent in tread design to the right shoe of Mr. Anderson. He could have made it. I am not positively identifying.
And that's the only footwear impression that you examined on this.
Yes, it is.
You didn't see. Tracy, I hand you State Exhibit 30. Have you seen that before?
Yes, I have.
What is that?
This is a photograph of the footwear print in blood that was present on the top floor of the sales room. First, I had our photographic section of the laboratory produce one-to-one or life-size enlargements of this footwear print. Then I did my investigative aid type examination in an attempt to determine the brand name, brand manufacturer of the shoe, relay that information to Investigator Stewart. When the shoes were submitted, I produced known exemplars and made my comparison of these shoes to this impression.
Tell us how you produced known exemplars.
Known exemplars are produced by me placing a plastic bag on my foot, then placing a shoe on my foot, stamping on an ink pad, then stamping on a piece of white drawing paper.
And in your training experience, is that an accepted manner of creating or producing a known exemplar for such comparison work?
Yes, it is.
What did you do then?
I then made my comparison to the photographs.
And how did you go about making that comparison?
I examined the photographs as well as the reproductions that I produced for the presence of individual characteristics. In addition to looking for individual characteristics, I was looking for areas of dissimilarity. I was also looking for the unit relationship, or if I have a characteristic at the top of the print, a characteristic at the bottom of the print in the question, do I have them corresponding at the top and the bottom in the known print?
What were the results of your comparison?
As the results of my comparison, is my opinion that this shoe, the right shoe, States Exhibit 34A, made this print, this footwear print that was reflected in States Exhibit 30.
Mr. Tracy, do you have any exemplars showing your comparison?
Yes, I do.
I hand you what is marked as States Exhibit 58. Tell us what that is.
This is a charted reproduction of the question print and the known print. The question print being produced from the negatives that produced this photograph, although they are in black and white here. The known print being reproduced by me by the method I described earlier.
And would States Exhibit 58 assist the jury in understanding your testimony and assist you in explaining to the jury how and why you made the identifications you just did?
Yes, it would.
regarding the state author's state certificate meeting, I think.
Okay.
State 58.
With court's permission, I would ask the witness to approach the jury and explain to them, with reference to state certificate 58, the comparison and identification of the name.
May proceed.
What I have before you now are life-size photographic reproductions of the shoe print that was recovered from the tile floor of the sales office, as well as the known print that was reproduced by me. I have them marked as question print and known print. You'll also notice that throughout both pictures, I have a series of numbers and lines drawn. The numbers represent different areas in both the inked and the latent where individual characteristics appear. In some instances, I may be pointing to one individual characteristic. In other instances, I may be pointing to areas where there are more than one individual characteristic. Brief description. Pointing to area number 1 that is present on the question print, you will notice we are in the third row of cross members that are present in this reproduction. When looking at the top, we're also at the far right edge of this print. When looking at the top of this print, you will notice that this bar, which is normally a smooth oval shape, is a divot taken out of it. When we go down to the bottom row, once again in the question print, still at the far right-hand side, the element that once again should be an oval shape has a corner removed. When we come to the corresponding area in the known print, see the third row, the top of the first element, divot removed. The first element in the bottom row on the right-hand side, there's a corner removed. Area 3 through 7 are in the bottom or heel area of the print. Area 3 is pointing to an area down in the bottom of this V, where we have a small divot removed from this element. Once again, when looking at the known print, you can see this reproduction, this area of reproduction. Element 4, this is called a herringbone pattern or zigzag pattern. When looking at the first herringbone or the first zigzag that completely, uninterruptedly traverses, first herringbone goes the whole way across the heel. When you look at the top of it, you'll notice that the top is sliced off. When you come over to the ink print, same area, same type of individual damage. Once again, coming to the question print, the next small part of a herringbone that's directly above where area 4 is, there's a divot removed on the top of that. You go from where that characteristic is, skip the next rib, following rib above that, once again the top has individual damage. When you come over to the known print, looking at your reproductions, here's where the top of the first full herringbone is cut off. The next rib, we have our damage, little divot taken out of it. Next rib, skip that rib. The following rib, you have the damage up on top of it. Step 7, or area 7 that I am pointing to, is an area, primarily the whole inside of the V, which when you will look at it, you will notice that we have what at one time was a smooth flowing line, now looks almost like a seascape, sea wave. You've got a bunch of points. This is a function of a wear. It is individual to the individual who is wearing. This pattern is reproduced along both the insides of this V. So the 8th area that I have pointed out is an area where we have some damage. The herringbone is cut. Once again, in the known print, it is reproduced in the same place that it is in the question print. These individual characteristics, not only their type, but their location, as well as their relationship between one another, is what allows me to make a positive identification and say that this footwear print was made by this shoe and this shoe alone.
let me begin, sir, by listening with you a little bit about the tire marks that were observed by you in the photograph. And incidentally, it's a fact, isn't it, that you have never been to the Ruth Patterson home. That's a fact, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And it's also a fact that you have never been to the scene where the safe was recovered, indeed where those photographs that are in front of you were taken. That's a fact to it.
Yes, I have never been there either.
So, it's a fact, is it not, sir, that you have not ever you have never taken the tires off of the Eugene Anderson vehicle and tested them in the sense that you have run them through the same type of material, dirt, dust, sand, whatever, that is depicted in photographs that are present in front of you.
No, I did not run the tires through a similar type of medium.
The best you can tell us is that the Goodyear tires and the Mohawk tires that were present on Eugene Anderson's automobile are just like a great many other Goodyear and Mohawk tires sold in this community.
Possibly, yes.
And it's a fact, is it not, sir, that you cannot tell us with any scientific degree of certainty that Eugene Anderson's tires made the marks that are in the exhibits. Exhibit 45F and Exhibit 45G.
I can say that the tires that were present could have made them, but I cannot positively identify them as having made them.
Right, you can't tell me that in fact what you see in 45F and G came from Eugene's automobile. You can't tell me that.
No, I cannot.
Indeed, sir, with respect to the photographs of the tire prints on the west side of Ruth Patterson's house, you've seen those, have you?
No, I have not. These are the only tire tracks that I did any comparisons with.
Okay, so nobody showed you those photographs and asked you to compare those photographs, prints, tread prints, with those.
No, they do not.
And let me take you to the safe. With respect to the safe, you attempted to lift prints from that safe, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And you were unsuccessful, is that correct?
That's correct.
Did you notice that there is an area on the safe where someone has attempted to peel it on the right side?
Yes, I did.
Did you print that at all, attempt to determine if there were any latent prints surrounding that?
I processed the entire safe for latent prints.
You found none.
I found none.
Incidentally, did you notice that there were pry bar type marks on the safe?
I noticed what appeared to be some pry marks, yes.
Is that an area of your specialty as well?
No, it is not.
You do not compare known bars, for example, to the marks that they would leave on the safe or instances on the safe.
No, that would be two more comparisons.
You don't do that.
No, I do not.
All right. In any event, you didn't do it in this case.
No, I did not.
No one ever submitted tools for comparison to your knowledge.
They wouldn't have submitted them to me, so I have no knowledge whatsoever.
All right. And then let me take you now to the runner. Exhibits 32 and 33 formats. I call them runners, okay?
That's fine by me.
As you look at those and as you compared the markings on them, Can you tell us with a reasonable degree of certainty that prints that you found came from exhibits 34, I think it's A and B?
To the exclusion of all others, no, I do not.
So you cannot tell me then, with any positiveness, that in fact, those shoes made prints on those two runners. You cannot do that.
I am saying they could have, but I am not saying positively that they did.
So it's a possibility, right?
Yes.
That's the best that you can do.
Yes.
No positive conclusion one way or the other.
In regards to the footwear prints on the runners, no.
Okay, so now let me take it into the threshold. With respect to the threshold there.
I am saying that they could have, yes.
And are you saying that they could have been exclusion of all of them?
No, I am not.
No positive, that is, no ruling in or ruling out with respect to those shoes and that correct?
I am saying that they could have. I am not saying that they did to the exclusion of all others.
So it's possible that they could be and it's possible they did not.
That's correct.
All right. Now then, as it relates to photograph, what's the number going to have?
State Exhibit 30.
As it relates to that. You made a test that you've been trained to make, is that true?
Yes, I did.
And that test by you was done by, in fact, you placing your foot in exhibit 34A?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yes.
You put your foot inside here, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Mr. Tracy, would you step down again, please? May I stand to your honor with the witness? And as it relates to your foot being in that shoe, that made the ink print, what you designated as the ink print, is that correct?
Not this one.
Good one to use. Because as a matter of fact, no question about what this is. You can't print. Palm print. There's no question about that, is there? This is the ink print that came from him as well.
Yes.
No question whatever about that. No. And you know that because you had the known print of Eugene Anderson and a latent print that you identified as Eugene Anderson, correct? That's Anderson to Anderson, correct? All right. Exhibit 58. You stepped into the shoe. That is called the known print, correct?
Yes.
You stepped into Eugene Anderson's shoe, 34A, and made that impression.
Yes, I did.
And you did that, I think, by inking the bottom of the shoe, correct?
Yes.
Putting it on, correct?
Put it on first and then you did.
Okay, and then you stepped on a piece of paper that was supported by some cardboard, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then what you've done here is demonstrated for us, I think, 8 areas where your foot made exactly the same 8 areas that appear in the question print, correct?
I made a comparison of the shoe print reproduced with my foot in the shoe,
Yeah, indeed.
comparing it to this shoe print.
And you found 8 exact areas, I'd say similarities. Huh?
I found 8 areas, at least 8 areas where there were individual characteristics that were reproduced
By your foot.
by my foot in this shoe.
Were there more?
There are additional areas, yes.
Could there be as many as 10, 15?
I don't recall exactly how many additional areas that there are.
So there's no question then that your foot made this, and you compare compare that with the foot. Okay? And
My-
match them up.
My foot was in this shoe when this shoe print was made. I identified this shoe print, which came from the shoe, as having made this print that was recovered from the scene.
Let me ask you then this question. There's no misunderstanding. Your examination, fact, isn't it? Your test, fact, isn't it? You cannot tell this jury that Eugene Anderson's foot made the known, the unknown print in Exhibit 58.
I'm going to answer your question. I hope you want to answer it, or hopefully what you're asking.
Before you-
I cannot say whose foot was in the shoe when that print was deposited.
One thing you can tell me is that in fact your foot was in the print that appears on the exemplar 58. You can tell me that.
Yes, my foot was the foot that was in the shoe when the known was made.
And you can also tell me one other fact, and that's this, that the same characteristics produced by your foot appear on the unknown in your exemplar 58.
Yes.
You were never in Ruth's house, however.
No, I was not.
Very dangerous to jump to the conclusion that since your foot made the ink impression in 58 and attached up to the ink impression also in 58, that is the unknown. Very dangerous to assume that you were in the house, isn't it?
It's not up to me for the interpretation.
It would be wrong for me to even assume that fact, would it?
Since I have stated I've never been in Ruth Patterson's house, yes.
You had 3,120 hours of instruction. I won't call it on-the-job training, but you did have that pursuant to training by Dennis Chapman. And that's true.
Most of my instruction was conducted by Darwin Chuck.
Some of it by Dennis? Well, any of it.
Not in regards to fingerprints or footwear or tire track identification.
I think you told us, however, that you did have 40 hours of FBI training.
I have had 40 hours of training by the FBI in fingerprint classification. I've had 40 hours of fingerprint identification training by the FBI. I've also received 120 hours of training in administrative advanced latent fingerprint techniques.
What is that?
It is a class conducted at the FBI's Training Academy in Quantico, Virginia, which gives more advanced training, more advanced techniques, state-of-the-art advancements, or exposure to state-of-the-art advancements that the Federal Bureau of Investigation has the resources to purchase and has the resources to do the research on, where the local agencies do not have the manpower or the money available for these types of research projects. Current research projects are involving enhanced development techniques through the use of lasers as well as other types of light sources. The Federal Bureau of Investigation is also doing research into other developing techniques as opposed to what would the classical developing techniques that we have available to us now. And they are also working big pushes on with the automated fingerprint identification system as far as trying to get some standardization between those.
Are there other techniques? determine the presence of fingerprints other than dust?
Yes, there are.
Are those available to DCI, available to you?
Some of them, yes.
And what do those consist of?
The most common technique available would be the super glue fuming technique. In addition to that, we also have available to us laser examination of pieces of physical evidence.
I mean, that equipment is present in your lab.
Yes, it is.
You don't take that on the road.
The super glue fuming is portable. The laser system that we have at the laboratory is not portable.
So you have to bring the object to you.
That's correct.
Those two techniques that you told us about here, other than the dusting technique, did you use either one of them on the stage?
No, I did not.
Did you have available, and did you examine any piece of wall with pattern? Looking for print findings.
The only thing I would have examined would have been a latent print left from the door frame that we discussed earlier. No sections of wall.
What else does
Special Agent Darwin Chapman and criminalist John Kilgore.
none of the three of you ever came to have
No.
did any printing?
Not that I'm aware of.
Incidentally, was there a print submitted to you, a latent print submitted to you that came off of a Corvette automobile? In connection with this case, what time you have?
There was laboratory exhibit BS, which is a sheet with latent prints from a car at the Patterson resin. The exact make or model of that, I'm not aware of.
You find the defendant's print on that vehicle?
No, I did not.
Yeah. You make a determination as to the age of the print.
By my examining techniques, there is no way for me to date or age a latent print.
You can't tell me whether the print in exhibit 7, the latent print, was put there on the 21st of August, assuming that this was listed on the 23rd, put there on the 24th. It was there on the 1st, put there on the 21st. You can't tell me that.
Not by my examining that, no, I cannot.
You can't tell me if it was put there 2 months before or a month before, can you?
No, it's not.
Tracy is, only city wing, she all had during those times.
I haven't examined that many pairs, but the pairs that I have seen, I do recall seeing this partial herringbone pattern with this area here on the ball of the foot.
You have seen that before.
Yes, I have. In Pony City, yes, I have.
How many times have you seen that before investigations that you've participated in? some brand new ones were submitted to you as well, that's right. Remember that?
No, they were not.
Dylan didn't bring them up to you? Jack Stewart didn't bring them to you?
Not that I was notified of.
Definitely different, so, cancer, all different. Did you make any determination as to whether or not that contained any human blood or anything of that nature?
No, I did not.
You did not do any serology work with respect to this. Linda did that in this office, that's right.
Yes.
You turned the latent print over to her to make a determination as to whether or not there was any blood on that print.
No, I did not.
Do you know if anybody did that?
By their examination and the choice of methods they used for the development at the crime scene, they would have made a determination there by the choice of methods that they used, which appears to be black powder. They have said that the examination that they are going for with this piece of evidence is the development of latent prints. Other serological evidence by, first of all, the application of the powder, second of all, the application of the lifting tape, and then placing it on the background makes any serological work impossible.
I appreciate it.
You're right. I step down and excuse, and we will take our overnight recess. Make comments on the minute. We call John Malcolm, I believe he's in the auxiliary courtroom. Malcolm? See, would you stand for the judge and raise your right hand, please? You talk for or affirm that the evidence that you're not on. Thank you, sir. Have a chair. State your name, please.
John Malcolm,
Where do you live?
Oakville, Iowa.
What is your occupation?
Metal shop spaces for the Ivy of Pole.
How long?
Metal shop,
What's your name also?
the Ivy of Pole.
And where is that business?
Burlington, Iowa.
How long have you been so employed?
28 years.
In addition to that work, do you on occasion perform repairs on automobiles?
I do.
And do you know the defendant was Eugene Anderson III?
Yes, I do.
In fact, you're not doing it.
Yes.
And you see him in the courtroom?
Yes, I do.
Would that be him on the fine as a defendant?
Yes.
Do you know what kind of car the defendant owns?
A early 60 Rambler.
Did you have occasion to do repairs on that?
Yes, I did.
What kind of work did you do on it?
I did a new overhaul.
How much was the bill for repairing the car?
A little over $300.
And do you recall the day the defendant came to pick up that car?
It was either a week and a half or 2.5 weeks before he was arrested.
And if the records or recollection would be the Wednesday, August 19th, would that come close to recollection? And he wasn't arrested on that following Friday, was he?
No.
You were at the racetrack or something on that day, wasn't you? But it was the following Friday you believe he was arrested. That would be August 28th.
Yes.
The court documents support that. Very good. And that would make August 19th the day he came here. Have you been paid yet?
No, I haven't.
At the time of the defendant, your nephew
picked up from Robert, did he tell you when he would get the money to pay you?
There was another gentleman with him, and they discussed it, and he said they would be paid on Friday, and he'd give me some money then.
That would be August 21?
Yes.
No further questions?
Rob?
Yeah, reserve charge. We may call John, this is nothing, but,
That's short. And you make that down, and subject to recall and cross-examination at that time, you are excused from sending your
No further witnesses? For today, Your Honor.
We will take our overnight recess, and remember the admonitions previously given to you concerning your conduct overnight. And with those things in mind, you are adjourned.